around the world since 1990, addressing the concept of spirituality in architecture when other architects were loath to acknowledge its importance. Noushin firmly believes that all man-made spaces should provide spiritual energy. Noushin Ehsan, AIA, is a licensed architect with over 35 years of international experience. She studied architecture at Tehran University and the École des Beaux-Arts in Paris. She also received master's degrees in architecture and urban design from UCLA. In 1985, Noushin founded Accessible Architecture PC, where she first developed the concept of the spirit of space. From 1974 to 1985, she was partner and managing director of BEB Consultants, with offices in Tehran, London, Paris, and New York. Noushin lectures and teaches in the United States, China, and Eastern Europe. She has taught at both the London Northeast Polytechnic Institute in England and Rensselaer Polytechnic Institute in Troy, New York. She has also served as an adjunct professor at the Harvard Graduate School of Design. In October 2007, Noushin launched a new business called Second Opinion Design, a client-oriented consulting firm. Her aim is to provide a second opinion for existing design projects. She believes you do not know what you are missing unless you ask for a second opinion. She wants to see that her clients' projects have the best chance to express the intangible quality of space and thereby satisfy their physical and spiritual needs. What that means for architecture is her subject this evening. I welcome Noushin Ehsan.
Thank you very much, Doug. It's really hard to speak after this beautiful introduction, and with my lack of eloquent language, somehow the fact that after 36 years I'm in this country, still I am not mastering neither the English, which is my third language, nor the second one, nor the first one, which was my mother's language. However, I'm sure you will forgive me, and you will enjoy the subject, which is very rich. I like to say good evening, friends, colleagues, and it's really an honor to be asked in the club that I like very deeply the activity in it, and be among all those scholar people who have spoken in this club, and share my thought with you. The subject that I'm talking about, the spirit of space, is very close to my heart, and I hope I will be able to share it eloquently. Anyhow, before I start, let me also thank you, in addition to the Committee of Architecture, which allow me or invited me to speak with you, thank Alden James, who is the president of the club, and also the member of the Board of Governors, that they really, with their effort, they put very rich and diversified program in this club that we are all enjoying it so much. Also, I want to thank some of the great guests and among us, which they gave me honor to be here. They honored me by their presence, and that is among them Mr. and Mrs. Frank Lambardi and Mrs. Kristen Lambardi, who they are Chief Executive of Port Authority, colleagues, friends, and I'm really touched and thanks to have them here. There are many of you that you came from far distance, and it's really, really, really pleasure to see you, and I hope it's more than anything, at least it will be a good evening for all of us. As you see, this young man has found his space, and in different way, we always find our own space also, and that way we express ourselves. Ideally, such a spaces should reflect the zoning, financial, and the infrastructure. Also should incorporate the traditions, the climate and landscape, as well as human interaction in architectural, as well as cultural, ecological, and even ethical issues. Louis Manfred, the great planner or sociologist, has said, as the environment, so is the man. But I like to believe that we also shape our environment and therefore influence our future of our generation. The way that we shape our built environment is a sort of a cliche word that's used among architects. What I mean by built environment is any spaces that is built by man. In other words, it's we created. So we shape the built environment through design, and the example of those can be seen in various plazas, which their attract various people with all culture, and the feeling of enduring feeling lasts for centuries. I start with showing one from my own cultural background, which is a plaza used to be called Shah Abbas Plaza before the change of regime, and now it's called Imam Square. It's from 17th century and still is as beautiful and as attractive to people as it used to be then. Another example is San Marco in Venice. And we also see the Lucca. In Lucca, it's Market Square in. By the way, I am supposed to be attached to this, glued to this microphone, which I have to, before I forget, thanks to Good News broadcast, which is headed and president of the organization is Paul Slaktus. And Paul, forgive me, he's a dear friend, but nevertheless, again comes my disability. But he has really created a program which is it's fascinating, and it's sharing all this good news. It is another privilege of me tonight to be part of his audience, and thank you for that. But nevertheless, I'm a little bit not used to be glued to this microphone, and forgive me that I have to be away from it. But going back to the subject, all those plazas and spaces that for centuries has been attractive, it is part of the creation of so-called built environment that we architects claiming to be part of the creator of it. And then Concourse Plaza in Paris is another good example, and we can go on. And in a modern world is any of you who haven't seen this Millennium Park in Chicago, I would really recommend you highly to see it, that with one sculpture, one major sculpture in that park, how much they have really attracted people and how beautifully this space used. And in different form, our own beautiful Times Square is one of those that, again, as we know, attract everybody, every ages, and so on and so forth. However, the feeling one encounter when exploring a built environment, and forgive me for this cliche, I'm going to repeat it, built environment, by the time you're going to leave the room, hopefully you have this jargon in your head, is the spirit of a space, which directly influence human behavior. A space has the ability to uplift, inspire, refresh, and relax the spirit of each individual. Some of them can even give meditational, inspirational, and spiritual aura that endure for some long times. A Japanese master once said, some spaces are silent, others speak. Some, which are more rare, sing. The silent spaces are often modest, and the one that speak provoke attraction. And we can see that by our friend and master Frank Gehry, who has created a space that obviously is very provocative and speaks very, very loud. And that's in Guggenheim in Spain and in Bilbao. But the one that sing uplifts the human soul. And this can be seen in this Institute of Contemporary Art in Boston, which designed by Diller, Scofidi, and Renfro. My goal in this presentation and in my new business initiative, which called Second Opinion Design, is to focus on the elements that will increase the creation of those rare spaces that sing. I believe that those rare spaces will also foster sustainable environments and can be categorized as following, which is the order versus sacred, public versus private, and accidental versus planned. And when we study each one, ordinary versus sacred, for instance, in this ordinary place, you feel Zen-like, and it's uplifting. Or in this Church of Light, as Louis Kahn said, the silence of light, it's really expressed very well, and it's really give you that feeling of aura that we are going to be talking more and more, which to me is the ultimate of everything. If we have created something which gives us that feeling of aura, we have created the masterpiece. So public places versus private. The public places, for instance, that in this example I'm showing is a place in China, in Chongqing, which you will wonder why people likes that. And on the surface, it's not very obvious that why so many crowd are gravitated to it. But the essence of all what I'm talking is there. Proportion. If, for instance, this building were higher and or this space was wider, may not be the same feeling that this has created. And also, the private space, like this little courtyard, give us the ineffable feeling, which one wants to talk about. Accidental versus planned. A good example for accidental spaces is this voids of New York between the building. New York is a very dense city, but we do not feel claustrophobic. And one of the reasons is that grid system, which at the end of the street allows you to have horizontal, the sky come and reach the floor and almost lift you up. And that is in places like, for instance, Wall Street, when one building is front of other, you don't feel that. But on the grid area, streets, west and east especially, you always have feeling of breathing, and that's good feeling. And then planned area is that, for instance, design of this development in China, which they call it the Venice of China, it's sustainable. And it has a it has a quality of sustainability because they carried their own cultural elements into this new design, even though the canal is man-made and it's all planned. And I think yesterday I received this slide, which I thought I should share it with you, which is a good news to see that in a hodgepodge development of Dubai, we still have some places that some developer has used the so-called those cooling tower, which are very traditional in the region, and each one of these slot carries the sort of wind of any direction that comes through the tunnel and hit the water and get it cool and used to the spaces. This is part of the Middle Eastern and desert architecture, but they capture that in this new development, and even though they call it also Venice of Dubai, but it still have that good feeling that we are talking about. As I said before, the spirit of a space influences our emotional being and has direct influence in our behavior. The spirit of a space exists regardless of material, style, period, location, or size of built environment. Also, it has little relation to the observer's cultural background or education or age. And we examine that little by little. Talking about material, for instance, in this building, which was a contemporary and also it was only temporary structure, which we had in as a nomadic museum, and it's designed by Bonn. You feeling, it gives us a feeling, cathedral feeling, but the material is used is cardboard, pressed cardboard as a structure, and also the shipping container for facade. So that means it's not the marble or expensive material that will make you uplift, give you a rich feeling. It can, those good feeling can be created by very simple device. And in completely another style, talking about a style which is also irrelevant, in this magnificent building, we see the eclectic style, but it is unified. And more so, its exterior is an intricate part of the whole. And I have to tell you a story here that about 20 years ago, when I had office in London and New York, and a client of us in London, which we have built for him a major office building and insurance building and so on and so forth, approached me to design for him a mansion with 18th century style of English 18th century style. And I refused, and I said, I know nothing about it, and what I know, I don't like it, and I'm not going to do it. And more I insist that I'm not going to do it, more he insists that he wants me to do. Finally, I said, Mr. Zaidan, you know many architects. Why don't you just go to them? He said, since I know the way you work and the integrity of your work and the way that you approach the design, specifically since you said you don't like it, I want you to do it. I was really shocked, and this sort of a twisted approach to his demand forced me to accept it. And it was the most difficult project I have ever done. And on top of the fact that I had to go and hire the specialist for 18th century, and then afterward he insists, in other words, from very beginning, he insists that he wants us to do the interior as well. And so I had to go and hire the interior designer who was a specialist on 18th century, and we really bought everything authentic, and we had to go for one country to another to choose the elements that would be right, and so on and so forth, and choose the fabric would give that kind of impression. So afterward, invite him to see the presentation. He said, no, I am not going to see the presentation. I said, what do you mean? He said, are you kidding? You think I'm going to give you that blessing with the little board that you're going to give me with the chip of a beautiful fabric here and the picture of the furniture or this and that here, and right underneath of it, and the composition of that board is beautiful, and you get my approval and that's it? No way. I know you have a difficulty to choose yourself and you're on your own. Oh my God. His attitude pushed me to the line that I literally had to go, instead of bringing a little sample of fabrics or material or anything, I would bring a very large scale and put it in front of my bed on the chair, that when I wake up, imagine the room and that beautiful stair or this and that in that fabric. And I really was doing it full-heartedly and trying to be the best I can. end result was such that when I was walking with him through the house, mansion, I cried. I cried out of the joy, and his eyes was just so much giving me pleasure. And that shows me that when something done well, you don't need to worry about what style it is. And from there on, I learned to stop preaching about my style as a modernist and this and that, and used to say to clients that if they like my style, come to me. And then I tried and I humbly forced myself to just use any talent and knowledge I have to provide whatever they want in a form and shape that gives that uplifting feeling. When something is done well, it doesn't matter. But it's the same with music, it's the same with anything that is art-oriented. And that is the reason that exterior and interior, as well as detail, always has to be part of whole. Unless it's part of whole, it just doesn't give that vibration that we are talking about. And for this reason, Shoghi Effendi, for the building of the house of worship in Baha'i house of worship in Wilmette, he said that the spiritual power to be released by the completion of the temple will not be fulfilled unless or until the exterior decoration is done. So exterior is not something that was added on and is just is a decor. The spirit of a space is experienced through characteristic of certain elements which result positive and negative feeling. The positive feelings are feeling of aura, which in another word I could say is subliminal feelings which are positive, and it creates uplifting sort of uplifting energy. And again, airy, order, joy, and warmth. And any one of them has a negative connotation also. Opposite than aura is suppression, and then is clutter, chaos, depression, and cold. And we examine each one of these together. Spaces that convey a feeling of aura have a cohesive, unified, proportionate, and holistic form, and we experience them in subliminal way. And examples of that, one of the examples is this, to me, edifice that is built by colleagues of mine who was classmate friend of mine from School of Architecture in Iran, and his name is Mr. Sahba. I am honored to say that he was even 2 years in lower class than I was, but he was so gifted, and he was so sort of inspired in this creating of this building, which is really has that quality of cohesiveness and unified and proportionate, and that's why give you the feeling of aura. In another example, the Temple of Heaven also has a holistic form, and it is timeless. And even though it was from Qing dynasty and it's in Beijing, it still is as attractive to everyone as the time that probably has been built. In a more modern sense, the Ronchamp is a chapel in France by Corbusier, and again has a unified form and is very proportionate. In complete different language, this building, which is not a house of worship and is an igloo, and I own this house in Connecticut, it gives that feeling of aura. At least it's something to me. And I'm going to share with you the little story of it, and that is when about 20 years ago, I was looking for a cabin in the wood. Literally, I had desired to have a country house which would be some simple cabin in somewhere in the nature. And for that purpose, I approached the realtor, and realtor showed me 3 places, and he promised me that he understood exactly what I want. And I went in the middle of my work day, Wednesday, I remember exactly, I went to see him. The first house he showed me, it was one of those Victorian house, very charmingly renovated and redecored, and yet it was not what I wanted. The second one was a very, very big outburst of modernist architect with a lot of glass angle and so on and so forth. Well, wow, was not exactly what I had in mind as a cabin in the wood. And third one, he brought me here. I was screaming at him. I said, oh, wow, what is this? It looks like Arabic tent. And I literally didn't want to even go out of the car. I was so upset to seeing it. Especially, remember that I had preconceived notion of what is right for me, and for that reason, I was not open to receive anything. I wanted cabin in a wood, and what is this? So as we approached it, I touched it, and it feels plastic, and is built by foam. F-O-A-M, literally by foam. The structure is a geodesic dome, and then it's covered by foam, and so on and so forth. So very, very much reluctantly again, I went through this very humble entry. As I just went under this dome, which the light and the sliding door and sort of view is completely other side, and it has a gorgeous valley and so on and so forth. So as I went inside, something made me silence. I couldn't understand what was it. My mouth was shut, and I just felt that I'm in a womb of my mother, and that is literally the feeling it came to me. And then I opened the sliding door, I went outside, and 2 minutes later, or much shorter, I came back. The guy impatiently standing right next to the sort of a staircase that was going to the second floor, and I told him that I want it if I can afford it. He said, oh, well, you haven't seen the house yet. It has an indoor swimming pool, it has this. I said, anything else is extra. I bought it within a very short period. I was the owner of it, and for 3 years, I was not sharing it with anybody. Any colleagues, any friends, any client. Number one, I was afraid that they would say, oh, she's divorcing her husband and she's losing her head. What is that she has bought? Number two, this was not the similarity of that design and my design, which was very crisp, very simple, very elegant. It's world of peace. I mean, I couldn't believe that I own this place. But every week, I would go there, and I would sit, and I would enjoy and get my strength, and come back, and not knowing why I am so much enchanted by a space. This and the previous building that I mentioned to you, the House of Worship in India, were the two buildings that converted me that education of architecture has to change. It's the essence which is matter. And this is something I can go on and on and on, talk about it, but after 20 years, still, this is the picture I took last week, still I am enchanted by this space, and it's not the sunset, it's not the foamness, it's the interior, exterior, it's the whole thing, it's the simplicity, it's one language, one thought process, it didn't jump from one thing to another. And of course, I now have made addition to it with the same thought and so on and so forth. Anyhow, the type of example that is really appropriate for being used for giving a feeling of aura is Parthenon. And as you know, Parthenon is the building that golden proportion has been discovered for the first time. And again, is one of those timeless buildings. In contrast, a replica can never radiate the same energy. And this is a replica of Parthenon, and is built in Nashville. And some of my friends proudly, they took me there, and I was so upset. I was so upset that I couldn't share with them why I'm so upset. Where would I begin? This did not give me a feeling of aura. So replica doesn't make it. Also, places that are cluttered or disproportionate are giving the suppression. It's not also, it's really in contrast, I have to say. They give the feeling of suppression, and those places that gives feeling of suppression are many, but I'm just going to use this again, place in China, as I don't want you to get a wrong feeling. Chinese have the best and the worst in their environment, the best architecture and the worst, all both happening simultaneously in China, and there are a lot to be shared about the bestness or the goodness of Chinese architecture as well. But those are the example came to me for this purpose. Suppression can be also planned. Suppression in this building, which is the Holocaust in Berlin, is designed by our beloved Daniel Lipskin. It's planned because the subject matter as Holocaust Museum was allowing that. And he was so creative that create emotion among every visitor. For instance, in this kind of a shaft that is, he even hired the artists that carve the head as symbolic, the head of all the lost soul in Holocaust, and people walking over this symbolically steel sort of round shape that is resembling the heads, and the sound of walking on the steel in this tall shaft gives you a goosebump. And that kind of a feeling, that kind of creativity is well received in that project. But if you are going to make brand out of that, and you are going to bring that kind of a design into, for instance, the History Museum in Toronto, which recently I visited, I would not think is a right way to do. So branding is not something I promote. Spaces that convey a feeling of airiness are normally have the natural light, open flooring, and natural ventilation. And the examples I'm giving you is one of the project that I was honored to be partner in charge and was a Museum of Art and Craft, which Gudbrod, very, very famous German architect, was, we were a partner with him in this project. And I think it is a building that has the airiness. But in much better example is the Modern Museum in Berlin by Ms. van der Rohe. And as you know, the feeling that the airiness gives us the sense of well-being and is very well felt in that space. In contrast, spaces that are complex, scattered, and fragmented feels cluttered. And this building in Tel Aviv is very much cluttered. I believe that the architects have sort of put together any form that he had learned or seen in his life, and he wanted to not to miss anything. In all respect to our friend Mr. Gary, forgive me, Mr. Gary, I felt similar when I saw his project in Student Union in MIT, and it was, I thought that Student Union, it should be a place that unified people, but again, the form and the shapes and so on and so forth, it was such that it was not conveying those feelings that I'm talking about. Spaces that convey a feeling of order. Order normally is perceived or achieved by easy access and functionality. And I think in this, again, fabulous space that it's again in Haifa, Israel, is Baha'i shrine of Bab, pre-runner of Baha'i faith, pre-runner of Baha'u'llah, who is the prophet of Baha'i faith. Anyhow, these terraces and the order that we see in this building is such that builds that hope and terrace, and you feel like you are walking toward your place of adoration. And order create powers, and that is very well received in this project, which is Forbidden City in Beijing, China. The contrast is of order is chaos, and that I want to tell you another story, which you know, these main architects or major architects, this master that I am referring to them, it's not a criticism, I hope, to individual, because every one of us do something that can be criticized. Criticism is easy, but to make my point. But to express the chaos in an individual building, I remember the story that when Lipstick Building on 3rd Avenue was just finished by Philip Johnson, and I remember I had to go and visit somebody in that building. And as I was just going and I was in a rush, I tried to push this door, didn't get open, that door didn't open, because the architect was so adamant not to identify the entrance, which is not a very, very important part of the building. Entrance, it has to be welcoming, but this is oval shape and it has to be simple. And so after I pushed several of those glass doors and didn't open, finally one got open and I went in a huge, huge lobby, and I tried to look for elevator. I couldn't find it. If an architect cannot find the elevator in a building, something is wrong somewhere. And so after I couldn't find it, I went to the receptionist and I asked, where is the elevator? By the time I was in the floor that I needed to be, and yet is a open labyrinth shape because there is no orientation and so on and so forth. Chaotic is absolutely, I had such a tension that I really needed to sit down to be calm before I can even go to the meeting. So you see how big the role of architects is in emotion of people. In complete different scale, you will see the sort of in this urban setting, also the chaos. Spaces that convey a feeling of joy. Those spaces normally have harmony in style, harmony in color, and the example I use is this Santorini. If you haven't been there, I recommend you to go there. I mean, this is not even designed or planned, all aspect of it by architects, but many of the building has been, but nevertheless they have rule and regulation which control it, and end result is very, very joyful. In contrast, development that are cookie cutters or lack inspiration, it gives a depression or depressed feeling. And that's the development in Moscow. Warm and friendly places has proportionate design where intimate objects are displayed. In large scale, we see the San Marco again in Venice, which is really warm and friendly. And in a small scale, this room or this place, which encourages openness and intimacy by all those sort of in objects that are personal objects and is not alien to the culture of those people that they have explored that room. Cold places, which is the contrast of warm, usually are the places that are out of proportion. Again, a long table in a narrow room or a very long corridor with a low ceiling, when things are out of proportion, feels cold. And I don't have a better example, but I feel cold in that room. Symbolism in architecture or built environment is also very important. Symbolism can also reinforce positive feelings and uplift the human spirit. And the Chinese are masters in that. For instance, in this wall, which is in a garden in Suzhou, by having those different shape opening, you have framed the same view differently. And instead of your walk become boring, it become more rejuvenating and exciting. And each one of these forms has different meaning. For instance, in this form, which has a meaning of love, when you pass by it, you just feel positive. Or this one that means prosperity, again, give you a positive feeling. However, in different scale, our Serenin, the great architect, has used and symbolized the bird to create a terminal, which is, I'm sure many of you have seen it, and prepare you for flight. And that emotional feeling is very much received in this building. Although the technology of today does not allow us to use it anymore for the purpose, but is one of those fascinating, marvelous examples of usage of symbolism in architecture. Recognizing the importance of the discussed criteria and capturing its essence leads to creation of spaces that are spiritual. And for that reason, lotus flower, which is a symbol of purity and spirituality, has been depicted by my friend Mr. Sahba to creating this magnificent, magnificent edifice. I was honored that in 1974 to be at the presence of Buckminster Fuller, and believe it or not, I have to, it so much looks different than me that I have to show it to you. That's me. Age does to us. He said, the purpose of life is to add value to people of this generation and those that follow. And then a Chinese architect says, the architect is not a creator of life, but a creator of built environment. That word, built environment. In order to best carry out this responsibility, what responsibility? That we are creator of built environment. We architects must be conscious of the subliminal aspects of design which create the spirit of a space. We must be conscious of that subliminal aspect of design. Not only form, not only color, not only material, all of them, all that would create that uplifting feeling. We must create places that always add value to people's lives. In summary, the value of work lies in the spirit of service for humanity or to humanity. The value of our work, no matter what work we do, I'm not in that case talking only about architects. The value of our works lies in the service to humanity. And as a Baha'i, I believe that the work done in the spirit of service is equivalent to the worship of God. Thank you. like to encourage you all to have question, and I just see a beautiful hand right there. Please go ahead. Thank you. Do you think we? If you don't hear it, even though I was told for the purpose of filming, I should repeat the question, but if you want, I can also try to pass this microphone directly if it can be reached. But so far, what I understand, it's my friend is asking if spirit of a space has relevancy to the culture, because certain culture have certain form, like arches is more in Middle East, and so on and so forth. My hope was that. I was trying to, I was hoping that the answer to this question has been cleared in my talk, which I obviously were not, and I apologize for that. But let me say that the ultimate achievement, which I talk about it as a feeling of aura, that any spaces that gives us that ultimate achievement, ultimate feeling, culture, age, education, all become irrelevant. Why, for instance, and that was why I was giving you example of looking at Parthenon, you don't have to be Westerner or Easterner that feel the majesticness of it. But there is always greater influence of those issues, and the great design, as I mentioned at the very beginning, are the ones that incorporate the cultural issues, the climate issues, all those aspects makes it richer. But when we reach to that ultimate, then it becomes irrelevant. Did I answer you? Okay, we have to carry it further. Next, please.
Some of your ideas about your second opinion service that you create. And I've seen a lot of buildings in New York, and people talk about sustainability. And how would you actually create, like having the building rebuilt in a way that achieves sustainability with a second opinion? That's my question.
As you heard, that the question is how within my new initiative, which is Second Opinion Design in my new business initiative, we would promote the sustainable environment or sustainability in design. It's a very, very good question. It's a loaded question. Both of these questions have been marvelous. And the very short answer is that sustainability, as I try to touch upon, it comes when one responds to the cultural need of people, when one responds to the economic of people and the climates of the place, and so on and so forth. It is not only when it's green in a sense of material, it's all of them. And to create those spaces, as a second opinion, what I'm offering, I'm just giving a second eyes. I am not trying to be the the architect's stamp or sign architects of the project. I stay behind the scene and share my thought as somebody who is not deeply involved and yet gives that feeling and impression, and helping the designers and or client, whoever wants me to share my thought with, to embellish it in a way that make it more sustainable. Thank you. Please, please, you are, yes, Mr. Mike.
Thank you, Noushin, for the beautiful lecture. You have actually forced us to think of opposites throughout your whole lecture. It's either an aura or it's a depression. So it forced me to think about another form of opposite. I'm thinking of the East Wing of the National Gallery in Washington by Ian Pei and the Museum of Art in Berkeley University. Both very beautiful. But you walk in Washington to the National Gallery, and you're exhilarated by what you see. But you're not seeing the art yet. When you go see the works of art, you see them in rooms where the architecture sort of faded away. You're not seeing it. It doesn't compete with the art, and I think it's such a perfect balance. The Berkeley building is very beautiful. You walk in, you have this sense of art, but when you try to see the work of art, they're competing all the time with the architecture, and therefore you can't really appreciate the work of art on its own. It's always in competing. You have a form of the architecture coming in at you as you start to see a work of art. So I wonder if you have any comments on that type of contrast between two different types of buildings. Thank you.
Thank you. You touched my heart because this is a subject that I have written about it. The question was that there are museum, like Museum of in Washington, Natural. Tell me the name of museum. The history of, yes, museum that you are uplifted in a space, and yet you carry those feelings through the rooms where you see the art. But in contrast, in Berkeley Museum is so overwhelming that you have no place, you're not yourself. You're so much somehow influenced by a space that you are not having your own feeling to yourself that you enjoy the art of others. This is a very, very good question, and it is one of my profound reason for dismaying some colleagues trying to, with their own creativity, to be ahead of the game. How could I say it that would not become too impolite? I always say that we architects have to be a backdrop, and we have to reinforce like a backstage. If the stage become more overwhelming than actor and actresses on the stage, we have not done our job right. And I always say sometimes we go to a shop design of for instance, a store. It's so beautiful that you walk around like that and just all you see the space and you do not pay attention to any merchandise. This is, to my opinion, is a crime. Although, don't get me wrong, there are some exceptional that, for instance, Prada made a hallmark out of that. So you don't go and buy a product over there, but because of that magnificent space, you remember Prada. So there is always exception to anything that one can say. But nevertheless, for instance, Museum of Guggenheim Museum in Bilbao, when I was there, I was so enchanted. In some corner, I was laughing, and in some corner, I was emotionally charged to feel crying, and it was really a work of art. But then, could I even see any art there? There was no way that art can be displayed there. That was the art itself. What is the role of architect? To me, that is not a museum. Is piece of great sculpture, which also brought great name and great money to the city and has many, many, many other plus to it. But as a museum, is not something I promote.
Noushin, I utterly enjoyed your presentation, and I thank you for asking me to come. I have known you for many, many years, and this dimension of yours, first time I know, and you did an eloquent presentation. As a physician, second opinion has been around for many, many years. And I advise you all to get second opinion in medicine.
Oh my goodness, now you know why I have invited him. He just absolutely, in a very eloquent way, promote the second opinion design. Thank you.
But this is not promoting my profession, but promoting healthcare of people. But I really like to ask you if you got the second opinion in architecture from medicine, or it is something that came to your mind. No.
Thank you for your comments. We have a question here.
I just want to ask, the building in India that looks like a lotus. What is it?
It is a Baha'i house of worship in India, and it's in New Delhi. And the structure, which is, when I talk about unified form, for instance, this being depicting the lotus flower, and every leaf is just built on top of each other. The structure is so light. And like, for instance, Sydney Opera, which each element is a stand on its own, and consequently the part is very heavy and they have difficulty to construct it and all of that. One of the beauty of it is like a great phrase. When there is something so complete, you cannot add one word or take away another word. This building, if you just take one leaf out, the whole thing will fall apart. And that is the additional importance of it. It's so unified, it's all together. It's not something that added on and is sticked on. And for instance, I always say in building of Sydney Opera House, you can just take each unit apart and still stand the rest of it, it's fine and it's look okay. And so you can just keep adding to it. But in this kind of a unified form, the same as Parthenon, you cannot touch it. It's as is. Thank you.
Why do I feel like Phil Donahue?
Hi, Noushin. I loved it, and I love the personal stories. And the question I'm going to ask right now has to do with when you mentioned that reproduction is not good. It also kind of compares to that project you were given of the 18th century mansion, and you didn't want to do it. Wonder if somebody went into your home in Connecticut and experienced that feeling that you had of being in your mother's womb, and somebody else got that exact same feeling and wanted you to reproduce what you had there for them.
I love you for this question. What this question is, which I am so happy, the whole talk is and get unfolded by this kind of beautiful question. She's saying that I refuse the replica. I said that replica is not good. So then what about if somebody comes to my house in Igloo House and try to replicate that, or how did I do the 18th century house for my client? The answer is that the replica, as long as it's captured the essence, is perfect. The replica, which is inch by inch in Parthenon, they are proud that they have brought inch by inch exactly the Parthenon into the Nashville. And even the goddess is laying down as foolish as possible, and they want us to feel the same. I don't think, if you are honest with yourself, you do. The artificial flower does not give that kind of smell and energy and positive mood that a real fresh flower does. But if somebody take that really a step further and get the essence of that flower and make his own version of it, it's creativity. There's nothing wrong with that.
I happen to have been in the Parthenon. We were at a wedding in Memphis, and I know exactly what you mean now, because it was almost a caricature of
Thank
the
you.
original piece.
Thank you.
Yeah, without the integrity that you're saying.
That's all.
I would like to say that I've had the privilege of being in the igloo in Noushin in Connecticut. I did not feel as though I was in her mother's womb.
I got to that. But were you in your mother's room?
It hadn't occurred to me, but now that you've given me the idea, I can only tell you it was probably one of two only spiritual experiences I've ever had in any environment. The other one was quite a different thing. But Noushin said that she didn't want anybody in her home for 3 years approximately because the environment was so special for her. Well, I didn't want to leave for 3 years. I can tell you that. It's the most. It's Noushin, as you see her. That space represents this lady who I consider to be an extraordinarily sensitive and benevolent human being. Just being a guest was, the tea was like going to the Queen's Castle in England for the generosity of her spirit. But it was so much her. And I see that more tonight, having listened to you, because you didn't lecture us when we were there. But everybody who was there didn't want to leave. It was, the first experience was an outdoor picnic, and so it was indoors and outdoors. And that swimming pool under that cement dome, she said, well, I said, we don't have bathing suits, didn't matter. You know, you want to go swimming, go swimming. But it, without clothes, I mean. But we didn't do it. We didn't do it. But you know, what you're saying here tonight is replicated in the environment that you created for me and for anybody else who comes into your home. And thank you for this. It was really a brilliant experience.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
How about right here? Would anybody like to say something about what they thought of the event? Would you like to say?
It was a great talk.
Okay. Would you mind?
And I'm
Tell us how I enjoyed Noushin or something, whatever you want to say.
Oh, I thought Noushin spoke beautifully. I loved how she defined space, and I'm looking forward to getting to know her better. Yeah.
Thank you. Here. Would anybody like to say anything what they thought about the show? Would you like to say something? Okay.
Ready? Yeah, I think it was wonderfully presented, and Noushin did a great job of showing her her thoughts and her ideas of what the spirit of space is created, and she displayed it in a way that's very easy for anyone to understand, coming from any kind of background, feelings that anyone can relate to, and you know, it was just a great presentation.
Okay, thank you very much. Would you like to say something about the show?
Oh, it was great.
Oh, hold on. We have to record you.
Oh,
Are
you want
okay?
to record
Yes,
it?
yes, yes.
Okay.
Can
So
you
you're
get
not going to
okay.
put it in the TV or something?
No, just on in a demo tape.
Ah, okay, it's
on
okay.
Good News, on my broadcast.
Okay.
Is that okay?
I just came here by accident, by my friend, and I wasn't expecting such an extraordinary, speech. So I'm so happy that I came. I had a very good time, and I learned a lot about architecture. And actually, it's bad because next time I go to any building, I want to see about all what I heard today. It's great. It's great, yeah.
Thank you. Super. Would anybody like to say something about the show? Would you like to say something about the show?
Oh, I thought it was fabulous.
Okay. Say, I was at Noushin show and whatever you want to say.
Oh,
We're going to tape it.
I'm a very good friend of Noushin's, and my friend Phil also, and Paula and Mike were here as well, and we thought the show was fabulous. Her presentation was informative. We had never heard her talk about her work before, publicly or privately, and in terms of the space, we have been to her home in Kent, Connecticut, which is lovely, and I don't know, I just thought she did a really great job with this project. I hope she does well in her promoting her work.
Yeah, I really enjoyed the talk, and I learned a lot from. Now I'm going to look twice when I see architecture and really question how I feel from that. And I was with Anne as well. We were at her Eagle House, and it was a very unique experience.
Marvelous. Thank you. Thank you. So, would you like to say something about the show? What you thought?
Oh, I thought it was lovely. And
we record it? Is it okay?
just sure.
Okay.
I thought it was just really inspiring. I'm an architect myself, and it's wonderful to be reminded of what's important and why one does it. And I think she expressed it beautifully, especially the personal anecdotes I think were really wonderful. So I really enjoyed it. I thought it was fantastic.
Great. Perfect. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Let's see here. Would you like to say something about the show? No. Okay. Thank you. Diversification of people. Let's see how. Let's move back just a little. Maybe get a little more. Okay, right here, I guess, so you have as much light as possible, I guess. Would you like to say something about the show? Okay.
I'm a long day friend of her.
Oh, okay.
One of the oldest.
Oh, okay.
We're from the same school.
Oh, okay.
Architecture.
Yeah, so say something.
I'm very happy.
But you got to record it, though. Is that okay? No? Okay. Okay, would you like to say something about the show? Okay, hold on.
I think Noushin was wonderful. She filled the room with positive energy. I think there are very few people who can do that just through architecture, and Noushin is that person.
Thank you. Okay, would you like to say something about the show?
About the chat?
About the show. Okay?
Okay. What is your name?
My name is Paul Slapkus.
Hi, Paul.
Hi,
how are you? I'm Paula.
Hi, Paul. How are you?
Good, thanks.
Good.
I liked, like people had said in the lecture, that she had contrast. And because space does make a difference with how you feel and think. So I really appreciate her bringing it to the forefront. So I'm going to really start thinking now about what Noushin talked about, the spirituality of space.
Wow, Paula, nice job. I see professional here. Okay, so let's see here. Should we get Noushin? I don't know. Well, let's walk over here, see if I get anybody. Let's see, there's anybody. Okay. Hi.
I have so little to say. How does it get to you as a Baha'i?
I'm just so bad at this. Please forgive me.
No.
I'm gonna let my wife talk.
She
She's
did
she's
very
a
well.
talker.
Oh,
You know who's
unbelievable!
really good.
Seriously.
Anne is
Yeah,
a
she
fantastic-
already spoke already. These are I've already signed them up. They're,
You know who's
they're
even better?
full-time
This lady.
reporters. I
She's
know, but
awesome.
she's. I think she should say something. Why don't you
She
say a
looks like
little
a woman
something?
that knows
She's laying low though. She's needs an. She said something about an agent. She needs an agent. You can't push me around like this. It's an insult. Is that our tape? All right, let's see if there's anybody else here. Would anybody like to say anything about the show? Would you like to say something?
I thought it was terrific.
Give it a second, okay? Tell us about
The
Noushin's
second
show. Say
opinion, Noushin show was terrific, and that's my first and second opinion.
Did you get him on camera? Sure.
I really enjoyed tonight's talk. I learned a lot about Noushin's take on space and aura and opposition and opposing forces there. I thought it was a very well delivered and heartfelt talk, and I loved how she used her own personal example of her home in Connecticut. I enjoyed it.
Beautiful. Thank you, sir. All right, so, is there any other girls that I want to meet? All right, let's go over.
Sorry, she got married already. Too late. I want this is my niece in the family.
Oh, I don't need to ask Noushin anything. Okay. I think we're done. Good, so let's get him like in the light here. So, you want the light in front of him and you'll be behind me? Okay. Could you say a few words about who you are actually, because it's important who you are, and say I'm the whatever here, and watch out for this glass because somebody really was stupid and left it. And if you could do that and say what you thought of the show. How's the lighting? You want him to move?
Where do you need me?
Too close? You want to move closer to me? Maybe you can say you're at the National Arts Club and you're the chairman.
I was going to say the chair of the Architectural Committee of the National Arts Club.
Oh, beautiful. New York.
You want the New York part too?
Nuevo Yorko. Why not? We'll pay high bucks to say that name. You know that, right?
How much of it am I going to see?
Oh, huh?
How much of the high bucks am I going to see?
Oh, you're going to see big bucks.
Oh,
I'll
okay,
tell you right now.
okay. Yeah, yai by yai, right? Are you ready for me? Or? I'm Doug Friedlander. I'm chair of the Architectural Committee of the National Arts Club in New York City, and I'm sponsor of tonight's program with Noushin Ehsan, which was a wonderful discussion of the nature of space and the spirituality of space. I know few people who understand space as well as Noushin, and I always enjoy hearing her talk about the way space can be shaped and how space can be made a spiritual experience.
Oh my God, we're talking big.